Hi, Bob Hooey here from Alberta Speakers, and it's my pleasure to introduce Candice Smiley, who is one of our newer members on the joint venture team of this way of getting to clients and saying, "Hey, I'm a speaker, hire me." So, Candice, welcome to Alberta Speakers.
Thanks, Bob. I'm pretty happy to be here.
I'm happy we could finally coordinate our busy schedules. That's the problem. You get busy people. It's like, you're available Tuesday. No, I can't. I'll have a Thursday.
Okay.
And then sometimes it's, well, let's check next month. And so now we finally got it together. I got you here in the studio. Let's talk about it. I'm going to ask you some of the same questions I've asked our other members of our joint venture thing. And the first one is, why did you start speaking? Like, how did that happen?
Wow. You know what? I've been performing and speaking and being involved in groups and activities since I was like 6 years old. So for me, it just feels like a natural extension of what I've always been doing. Certainly for me, it comes from a place of wanting to share ideas and, in sharing ideas, sharing value. And so I think that's a big part of it. I think, especially right now, based on, the items I want to share, a lot of it comes from my own story and my own experience. And I have discovered, at least I enjoy listening to the speakers who sort of share from, this is what I learned, this is where I've come from. And I think it's our stories that bring us together. And ultimately, I want people to come together. And so it's about sharing value and bringing people to a place of connection.
That makes sense to me. I mean, that's how we connected,
Yes.
and we shared some stories, and we thought, hey, let's keep getting together on a regular basis, which we've done.
Yes.
So let me ask you another question. When you're working with clients, what do they get when they engage Candice? Like, what makes you different? What do you bring to the table that they get when they actually engage you?
Well, they get a lot of energy.
Okay.
I like showing up to, as I said, to connect people. So the conversation, it tends to be a conversation. And so I enjoy it when I get to interact with people, even if it's through, online, which has certainly become prevalent. I'm very comfortable doing that. And if it's person to person, it's about leaving people with a sense of that was worth my time. And so a big piece of that is I love talking about the truth. And that's sort of where I'm coming from in terms of my own life. And a big piece of that was I didn't always listen to the subtle niggle of what was going on in my own space and my heart and my mind. And so from that, made some, whoppers of mistakes, but learned a lot along the way. Something else you and I have in common, right? I'm either going to, succeed at this or I'm going to learn something. And I think that, the more we can talk about some of those things, we release ourselves from guilt and shame. And I mean, these are big concepts where we see in the world right now as people are really settling into themselves. But I mean, that doesn't just settle into the personal element of it. There's also, I've owned my own businesses for over 15 years. And so with that entrepreneurialism, sales, building relationships, connections, networking. So there's multifacets, I think, that all ultimately align, in the connector that I would consider myself to be. And so it's really about conversation, connection. And again, that how can we add value and how can an element of my story impact the company or person I'm working with and for?
And I guess that's the point too, is being able to look at what you bring, to bring value and relevance to the audience, so that they go, hey, I could do that too.
Yes. Yes.
And
For sure.
that's the big deal. Like, and you and I talked about that, is you live long enough, you've gone through enough that some of the lessons have taken.
Yeah.
And some of the times you come around again and it's like, okay, I'm getting hit on the head with this. Maybe I should learn to duck when I go through this particular door, instead of getting hit in the head every time I do it. Oh, there's something. Okay, I'll fix it. Or cut the tree down so it's not hanging in my face. But we do that in business and in organizations and leadership, where we need to look at different ways of doing it and saying, how do I enhance what I'm doing so that I'm more productive, that I get more satisfaction out of it. The people who I'm leading get the same things, and that overall what we're doing is more productive and sometimes more profitable, which is where I think sometimes as a speaker, we speak to those things. And that's the value we bring, is we tell stories that unearth truths that if it was coming from the CEO, might not be recognized. Sometimes you're the objective third party saying the same thing,
Yeah.
like the parent having something said by somebody else to their kid, and the kid goes, "Hey, mom, guess what?" And you're thinking, "I've been trying to tell you that for like 6 months, and yet you
Yes.
hear it from somebody over here. That you listen to. Me, you ignore. What can I say?
Yes. Yes.
And because I do that with my clients, I go, what would you like me to get across to them
Yes.
that you don't think they're hearing? Because
Mhm.
maybe I can do it from my perspective, and I'll wrap it up in a story, maybe even somebody else's business story, and maybe this will work here,
Yes.
and they appreciate it. So let me ask you a question, because you've been doing this for a while. Is there a particular audience or a client that would be an ideal client for you?
I think a lot of my message resonates well with women and
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily have to be, an all women crowd necessarily, because I am fascinated with the differences in terms of how men and women think. And so oftentimes I'm very cognizant of the language with I'm using. This word will appeal to the woman in the audience, and this story will appeal to the guy. And so I'm very aware of that.
Mhm.
I think though I would work well with a company or certainly within a group of people who understand that there's a lot of change in the marketplace. I'm one of those few who enjoy change and embrace change. And so a lot of my stories come from a lesson in learning or realizing, oh, I need to make a change here. And how can I do that without feeling overwhelmed by the change? And then certainly I think a lot of it comes from a space where people understand that there is a rise of a different entrepreneur. So both the rise of the feminine entrepreneur, we're seeing a huge rise in, women CEOs. So a company who recognizes that, there's a lot of change in who's rising through the ranks. And I understand that. And I would love to speak to those potential leaders, speak to those people who potentially would be, and maybe even in that help to shift some mindsets of people who might be resistant of the change. So I think that's a happy place for me.
And that would be a value add place too, because you think about it in when it really comes down to it, somebody that's running an organization, if they're hiring people and putting people into place, want to hire people that will succeed.
Yes.
They don't want to say, let me hire a whole bunch of dumb people that won't succeed and cost me money and time. I can't imagine anybody ever running a business or an organization like that. They want to hire some winners. They want to hire some people that grow. And some of them, that's probably a frustration point for them of saying, how do I help these people evolve and become the best that they can be?
Yes.
Because that puts the pressure on them as the leader.
Yes.
And so if you can come along and take some of that pressure off and say, let me help you.
A big piece for me, within my own personal life, and it comes through my personal story, is taking radical responsibility and radical acceptance, which I feel like would be awesome for companies that are looking, again, to establish leaders who would like to be leaders in the marketplace. So companies who are very much on the move, or who maybe realize that they're stuck. So that we can call out within the organization those people who already exist, who are saying, I have a good idea, I just haven't known how to share it yet, and bring that forward.
Well, and sometimes from experience, because I've been doing this a couple of years too, there are heroes in every company.
There are.
Some of them have been recognized and some of them are being ignored.
Yes.
And that's the sad part. So part of my job is to say, who are the heroes in your company and how do we let them evolve and rise to the top? Because they will, if you let people do things, they will amaze you.
Every time. And I mean, I think that's even been, some of the organizations I have worked and spoken for, I enjoy, and maybe it's because, I've had a varied experience, both in my entrepreneurial career, both in how I grew up. Then, I often say to someone, like you said, what message do you want to communicate? And then I can, put that together and bring it forward, which I enjoy. I really enjoy that piece, because you're right. There are usually people there who already exist. And isn't that where we want to, right? To continue that culture and community.
Yeah. You want to bring them to the surface so that they can shine.
Yes.
So let me ask you, you've been doing this for a while. Tell me some of your success stories, some of those things you went through. Maybe they were challenged when you did it, but working with a client and the end result was like, kabong, you know?
Mhm. Yep. I think a big part for me is, and this is leaning back into some of the amazing sales training I've had the privilege of listening in on and listening to. And a big part of that was, I'm fairly introverted, which I think is an asset because I do enjoy reading the room and reading people very quickly. And, we have that ability to usually chameleon, right? So we fit in, which I think has been an asset in terms of aligning to an audience or to a crowd and meeting them where they're at. But with that, I enjoy asking good questions and weaving those into it so that, whether it's one-on-one or small groups or even larger groups, that you can literally see the aha moments that aren't necessarily coming from someone being taught. They're hearing the question, they're hearing an example, and then they're going, oh, that makes sense. And I see this a lot, especially when I'm working recently right now with a lot of marketing clients. So it's in, how can we communicate better, to your clients? How do you offer that? And when the aha moment goes on, then of course you see them begin to attract the right clients, or that salesperson who was not able to, get on the phone and close with any kind of confidence, all of a sudden is now building relationships because they've realized they're not necessarily on the phone just to close. They're on the phone to build a relationship, and that ultimately supports the company that they're working with and for. And there's a loyalty there, which, I grew up on a farm, right? So handshake is still how we do business. And isn't it great when you have people who are working with you and for you, who are now loyal to you and the brand because of the value and the input you've put into their lives, and that effect both at work and out at home as well.
Yeah. Well, and they've proven that if people are appreciated, they'll put more into it. If somebody appreciates the effort, they'll put in more effort because they there's something about you that loves to be appreciated.
Yeah.
So if you do, you put that extra little bit in to say, well, okay, I don't want to disappoint this person, but they believe in me. So I'm having a tough time, but I'm going to hang in there. I'm going to push through. I'm going to work through this. I'm going to make this happen. And that's the fun part of what we do.
Yep. It is.
That's the fun part we do. Now, tell our viewers a little bit about some of the stuff that you do outside of speaking. I know you have a podcast, and some of us have books, some don't. Take it from there.
Yeah. Well, I do currently have a podcast. It's called Create the Ripple, which is very much around my brand, which started years ago, but I'm loving where it's going. There's certainly some ideas in the works for things like books and that sort of thing. But right now people can find me on the podcast, which is really designed around what I talked about earlier, this trust and Nigel tell the truth, which is about, what changes can I make? How do I make a shift? And then how do I communicate that, right? Both to myself and then ultimately out into the world. And I mean, that's a huge part of it. The rest of it is being actively involved in the community. So I'm pretty active in terms of my social media, which I think is again about, content and creation and connection, which, core value for me, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the point of again, going back to that same point of delivering value and finding different ways of doing it. And I so want to appreciate the fact that you've decided you want to be part of our joint venture program. It's something I started a dozen years ago to say, hey, maybe we as speakers can help each other by spreading the word. And, Nicole's information in terms of how to get a hold of her and stuff is on the link that where you found this interview is all there. So I want to thank you for taking time to talk to us. I want to encourage those of you who are watching this on Alberta Speakers or wherever it shows up to please take the time to check out Candice and see where she can help you in your goal, in your progress and in your journey, because that's why we do this, so that I can bring some good people who bring good value to people who need help. And so that's why we do this. So Candice, again, thank you so much for making time. We finally got a chance to get this together, and we'll get this up on your part of the website in the next little while.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much.